Aerik Arcadian, so good to see you. How are
Hi,
you? How are you
I
doing?
am good. How are you doing?
I am well and happy to see you. I think a few people in our digital village are aware that we've been trying to do this all morning, dealing with some tech issues that I think might be solved.
This is
So
attempt number two.
it is. So let's get going. Our purpose here today is to have a debate. And let's set the stage just by letting people know, first of all, who you are. Then we'll introduce the debate topics, and then I will let you convince me not to be a cranky old lady. So tell us who you are.
My name is Aerik Arcadian, and I am a high priest. I'm a musician. I'm a writer. I do lots of stuff. So if you want to get into some of that, go check out my website, aerikarcadian.com, or just pop on over to @AerikArcadian on YouTube.
Perfect. And thank you so much for being here with us. Really appreciate you. And just saying hi to a couple of people who've joined us, Smile Soul 20, Nalini. So happy to be introducing you to Aerik. Aerik will be back with us. You can see the link is already up. Tell me, do you pronounce the word WYRD weird or word?
I say weird.
Yeah, I like it that way too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing Weird Wednesday, and we're going to do a few of them, but we're going to do the first one coming up in 2 weeks on Wednesday, the 21st. As I said, the link is already up. We're going to do a class where Aerik attempts to teach me runes. Aerik did a fabulous class on runes at StarCon 5, and I have been learning runes since Christmas with a surprising, I've been surprisingly inspired. Let's put it that way. And it's weird to go from tarot to runes. So you're going to help me with that
Mm-hmm.
in just 2 weeks. And you're like, no, it's not weird at all. It's fine. I heard that.
No, it's just like, so if in tarot you are looking at it like you have reduced all of language down to a certain number of cards, right? You only have one card to express all these different ideas. Runes is even less than that. So instead of a whole deck of cards, you just have 24 runes. So it's even more open to interpretation, but I think you know more than you let on.
And I'm realizing, how time flies. It wasn't this past Christmas, it was the Christmas before. So I'm like a year and a half in.
Mm.
And I don't know. That's the conversation I need to have with you because I don't know. I think I do, but I don't know that I do. And so I need to work with someone who knows. And Caroline McLaughlin, thanks for coming back. You were with us when we were not sounding so good, so I'm glad you're here. Mick Schweer, glad you're here. Okay, so today's topic. I did a post on TikTok, mostly to be funny, but which I should probably never try to be funny, but it was expressing something real. And what I was expressing was my ire at it was a specific word. It is my ire at the word portal when used to describe something spiritual, where people say, this date is a portal. Like people were saying to me, 5/5, the date, May 5th, is a portal. And I'm like, no, it's the day after Star Wars Day, but it's not a portal. A date is not a portal. And mirrors, people say mirrors are a portal. I'm like, no, unless you're coming at me with a Rick and Morty portal gun, I am not interested in hearing about portals. And everyone's like, agree. And then Aerik, who, like, I admire you so much, you came on and you're like, no, I am all for this. And what you said was, I love using sci-fi terms in our practices. And thusly, I challenged you to a debate. And here we are, and I am very willing to be convinced that this is cool. And that's our question. Is it cool or is it cringe? And I do want to point out, when you say that you're a high priest, what is your tradition?
So my wife Celine and I, we actually run a Gardnerian coven in West Palm Beach.
Mm-hmm. That's what I thought. And so this is where, like, I think this is really fun because I'm like as eclectic can be, right? I will cast a circle with a wooden spoon and swamp water. Like, I do not care, right? My understanding of the Gardnerian tradition is it is a lot more buttoned up, if you will. Like, it's a lot more specific about how things are done. And so I think it's funny that I, in this conversation, have the stick up my butt position and you don't, because I would have thought it would have been the opposite, maybe?
So disclaimer here, the views that I may express today do not necessarily reflect the views of the greater Gardnerian community or anyone else in my coven. So this is just my experience. And, for that reason, I don't necessarily have to change your mind, but I am interested to hear your side of it and what leads to your rejection of this word.
Yes. Okay. So, I'll start with that. It's a couple of things. Number one, I've noticed since sort of the rise of like social media witchcraft, if you will, which I support fully and am very excited by, I've noticed people like over spiritualizing everything. And that drives me nuts because if you over spiritualize something, you're going to give it more importance than you should. And that can be problematic. And one of the ways we over spiritualize things is to give things fancy names. And so that's one. Two, specifically around mirrors. Where this whole thing started for me was like 4 years ago. I saw someone online saying, if you have two mirrors facing each other so they reflect within each other, you're going to open a portal that lets demons in. To which I said, right? Thank you. To which I said, well, if that's the case, then every hair salon is the most demon-infested place in the world because those are just rooms of mirrors facing each other. What about dressing rooms? Like the next time I go to Dillard's to buy a dress, am I going to be attacked by spirits because of the three-way mirror? No, I will not. Not true. So there was that. I also, and this is me being old and bitter, right? I also feel like all of my life, I've been told that what I do isn't real, that tarot card reading isn't real and certainly is not a real job, when in fact it is my job and has been my job for 30 years, and that witchcraft is a fictional thing. Witches are fictional, not real. I'm here. I'm real. And so when you start using words that sound fictional, like sci-fi, the second word being fiction, I feel like that further delegitimizes us. Go.
Okay. So first of all, that's why I have avoided hair salons for years. They're just infested with demonic activity. So guys, if you're watching, definitely avoid the salon. Just kidding. Okay. So I will give you a serious answer. It might be kind of, I don't know how long of a story this will be, but I have a lot to explain here with how I feel about it. So first, I do partially agree. I can at least see where you are coming from with the imaginary stuff, the fictionalization. So as I mentioned before, my wife and I run a coven of which you are aware, Christiana. And it is indeed a teaching coven, which means that we take people who have no magical background or no experience with Wicca or anything like that, and we teach them. And that's the point, is for people come in, be new, and learn. So what happens a lot is new people come in and they will ask a question. And the question is something like this: what is the spell for blank? The spell, right? What is, okay, my dog ran away. What is the spell to recover a lost dog? And if you're asking that question, you are kind of missing the point of what we're trying to teach entirely. Because there is no the spell for anything. We don't have 5,000-year-old words of, recover the lost treasure, recover the lost puppy, find a new cat, whatever. And I feel like a lot of people have this misconception. But what we are trying to teach is that it's Dumbo's magic feather, right? The magic is within you. You have the power. That's always inside of you. It's not like these magic words that you're going to find in a book somewhere. It's within you. And so that happens a lot, right? And if you are scrolling through social media or you're on a forum or a group somewhere, you're probably going to see that question a lot of the time. And it's easy to get frustrated with that. And I think, like, up until a few years ago, I would have, in fact, fully agreed with you on this issue. Because, and I can't speak for like prior to the 90s because I don't really remember, but around the 90s, right? You have all of these people who might have been inspired to learn something about a religion that was not Christianity due to movies and TV shows. And I mean, we're talking like silly stuff like Charmed or The Craft or whatever, right? I know there were like that sparked an interest in witchcraft. And with that interest came a lot of misconceptions too, right? And you have people coming in and they're saying, oh, well, I'm going to open an extra dimensional doorway in my living room. I'm going to hover 6 inches above the ground and I'm going to physically manifest those angels and demons on my dining room table. And that's their expectation. I don't know. But no, like legitimately, people have sent me messages and said, yeah, I've been practicing for about a month and I am unable to get the demons to physically manifest fully. What am I doing wrong? And it's like, okay, so friend, you are kind of missing the point of magic. And so like these misconceptions, they can cause frustration. And coming from a point of view where you have experience and a point of view where you have knowledge and you're familiar with things, it can be frustrating to see these questions asked over and over again. And it can be frustrating to deal with these people who have misconceptions because they came from a world of Harry Potter or some other, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, right? That was a big one. Like, don't you guys worship the Dark Lord, right? It's just all this stuff. So it can be frustrating to deal with those people. Until one day I was kind of thinking about my spiritual journey and I realized I am one of those people. Like in one way or another, I am kind of one of those people because I was reflecting on things that I did a long time ago. And I don't know if I've ever told you about this. I might have mentioned it in passing, but Star Trek was fundamental to my spirituality. So this is a topic that I would like, I think I might make a video about because it's fun and it can go so many layers deep. But the start of the story is that I was a kid living in a very sheltered Christian home. So if it was not Christian, I was not allowed to know about it. I didn't know about it. I was not allowed to have exposure to it. So if you were going to talk about something occult, I wouldn't have known what you were talking about. But for some reason, this rule was suspended if it had to do with like science fiction or fantasy. Like I was allowed to watch Star Trek, and I was allowed to watch some fantasy shows and stuff like that. Because I guess since it was so much pretend and it wasn't real, I was allowed to see it. My parents didn't see that as harmful to their religion or what have you. So my exposure to a lot of ideas that were non-Christian came through Star Trek. And I remember as a kid, I don't know which Star Trek episode I was watching or which Vulcan I was seeing on the TV at this particular time. It was probably Spock. And he was doing some like, Vulcan candle meditation or something like that. And I was like, that looks peaceful. That looks relaxing. I had not heard about meditation outside of this, okay? Because meditation was an Eastern practice, right? That was, that wasn't Christian. But I saw Spock doing it, and I thought that might be interesting. I think I'm going to try that. And so as a kid, I remember sitting on the couch, and I kind of like, sat with my legs crossed and put my hands in a position, and I closed my eyes, and I just sat there in silence. And I kind of enjoyed it. And then my mom walked up, and, she saw me just sitting in silence with my eyes closed. And she was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm meditating." And she got upset. I got in trouble because meditation was not Christian. So I know that like meditation it's a real thing, right? And maybe it's not quite exactly what we're talking about in terms of using fictional terms, but I think it is at least adjacent to the topic. And then when we get to the terminology specifically around portals, so like because of my upbringing where I was exposed to a lot of science fiction and a lot of fantasy and stuff like that, I learned to replicate what I was seeing on the TV in my mind when I was imagining things. All of those far out scenes that are magical or super sophisticated technology, I learned to use in my imaginations when I was pretending. And there are things that I see in my mind, which I can pretty much guarantee you I have no adequate means of expressing to you verbally. I could try, but I probably won't do it justice. However, if we have this shared experience of seeing things in science fiction or in fantasy, I believe that these words, these context clues, the language, when I say portal, it can be a common denominator for arriving at that point of what you need to see in your imagination, which we would not have otherwise. And for me, using a dark mirror was really difficult. And there are a variety of ways which you can tell someone how to get into another realm through a mirror. You can say, pretend it's a doorway. All right. That word doesn't really work for me. Pretend it's a threshold. That word doesn't necessarily work for me. A gateway. That didn't work for me. Like they're all expressing the same thing, the same idea. They're synonymous. But when I read the mirror is a portal, all of a sudden I knew exactly what process, what to picture, what I needed to do in order to establish this link through my mirror to another realm. And I know it's silly, but I think language is, it does play a very important part in our visualization cues, and certain words have certain implications. And it's a trigger End of my story.
I know that was incredibly. Wow. Yeah. Okay. That was fabulous. And yeah, it makes complete sense. And I was thinking, like, as I was preparing, I was pretty sure that you would say something that would help me understand. And I recognize it is generational. You know, it really is. And it's generational in a couple of ways. Because, like, you and I both, like, I'm probably, I think, significantly older than you are. Or at least
I don't know if I'd say significantly.
Well, you grew up, you're a 90s kid.
80s.
Okay.
I'm 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I
late
grew
80s.
Late 80s. Okay, I was born in 62. So, so maybe not significantly, but somewhat. But there is, like, culturally these lines of demarcation. And I think between our two generations, there's a couple of things that changed. One is around Christianity. I grew up in a Christian household as well, but not fundamentalist, not evangelical. My dad was a Methodist minister. We're talking social justice leaning. Jesus is love, and we all just love each other, and that was Christianity. There was nothing that I was not allowed to do because we were Christian, except be mean to people. Like that's right. The thing you're not supposed to do, right?
You had a deck of tarot cards as a kid, right?
My mother gave me the Gypsy Witch fortune telling cards when I was 8. And so, yeah, we were, my mother was into Edgar Cayce. Like, we were all up into all of that. Aerik, where did you go? That's interesting. Hang on one second. Let me bring you back. I don't know what happened there, but I think you're back now. You're back now. Okay, good.
All right.
Good. Okay. And I fixed it myself. I didn't even need to get John. I'm like, so, but then I did end up going to a fundamentalist high school in the 70s. And so fundamentalism did exist, but it was not the way it is now, or even the way it was in the 90s. So I think there was sort of more repression coming up in the 80s and 90s than I experienced in the 60s and 70s. So that's one thing. I think also the idea that, we all come to this magical stuff through fiction. Like, that was not a thing I really wanted to play with. But, okay, I will match your Star Trek story. I also grew up watching Star Trek. So did my kids. It's a thing, right? But when I was 6 years old, there was a Little Mermaid cartoon, I assume based on the Hans Christian Andersen Little Mermaid. And she had a crystal ball that she wore around her neck into which she could gaze and see the future. So when my 6th birthday rolled around, my mom wanted to know what I wanted for my birthday. And what I wanted was this paperweight crystal ball that I had seen in the window of a boutique in our town. And she's like, what does a 6-year-old want with a paperweight? And I was like, that's what I want. She's showing me dolls. She's showing me all kinds of stuff. I'm like, nope, that's what I want. And I wanted it because I wanted to be like that mermaid and look into it and see the future. Now, I still have that. And I still tell stories about it. But to your point, look what I do for a living now. So I think you just won the debate. I'm gonna, because it's true. I mean, there it is. Now, Caroline McLaughlin comes in and says, yeah, I do agree with your analogy. That is exactly what I see in my mind when a portal is mentioned. And that's something else. Like when I first came to Wicca, it was through Bucky's Big Blue Book. Mm-hmm. So, of course, it was Gardnerian. I think a lot of us probably started out with that Gardnerian, theology. And one of the things that Ray Buckland would say a lot is that you have to use the language, the props, the tools, whatever, that are evocative, that to evoke the energy is what helps us get there. And so if that works, then it works, and it's irrefutable if it works. So, yeah. Okay, there it is. All right, so I will no longer give people a hard time for using words like portals. You heard it here first. And I want to thank you so much for this conversation and sharing this, because it is true, different generations have different journeys. And I think about the generation now that is growing up with, on-demand streaming and, TikTok. So, it's going to be interesting, but we have to be here for that generation, and that's what we're doing. Mediha Ness comes in and says, parents, don't buy your kids paperweights unless they're magical. Right, yes. See what that turns into, right? So, anything else you want to share on this topic?
No, I think I adequately went through everything that was in my mind. So
I have nothing to throw back at you. So I totally capitulate here, as I thought I probably would end up doing. So we're going to see you back here in our digital village in 2 weeks. That would be Wednesday, the 21st, 7 p.m. Eastern time, for Weird Wednesday, the first of maybe 4 or 5, where we're going to be learning the Elder Futhark. And I'm looking forward to that. Let people know what services you offer and how they can get in touch with you.
So you can always find me at my website, aerikarcadian.com. You can find me on YouTube or other social media like Facebook or Instagram. My handle there is Aerik Arcadian. Pretty much if you just type my name into Google, you'll find something. I have a strangely spelled name, so there's not a lot of other Aerik Arcadians out there. I offer rune readings. If you're curious, you can book a rune reading with me. And in the next few months, I am teaching a series of classes, one of which will be on the runes. And then the other 2 are on fluid condensers and sound magic. So kind of 3 areas of interest that I have that I think are important that everybody should know more about. So if you're interested, you go to my website, aerikarcadian.com/classes, and you can find more info there.
Perfect. And I will put a tag in both of the descriptions. We're running horizontal and vertical on YouTube. I'll put a tag in both of the descriptions so people can see and go there. And we'll see you here in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Excellent.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. Take really good care.
You too.
Be good.
Bye.
Bye-bye.